Tonight, you are stepping into one of the oldest and most unsettling questions in the Harry Potter universe. Not the mystery of who opened the Chamber of Secrets, not the secret behind Horcruxes, not even the true nature of the Deathly Hallows, but something deeper than all of them. We are following the trail of death itself. If you have wandered these quiet halls with me before, settle in and let the familiar shadows gather around you once more. And if this is your first night here, you might leave a small note below saying, Night 1, so that somewhere beyond this story, we know exactly where your journey began. For now, let the noise of the day drift away. Imagine cool stone beneath your feet, the scent of damp earth rising from the lakeshore, and a single lantern burning beside the black waters beneath Hogwarts Castle. The hour is late. The castle windows glow faintly above the lake, their golden reflections trembling across the dark surface. Most students are asleep behind thick curtains and ancient walls. The giant squid moves somewhere beneath the water, unseen. A breeze slides through the reeds at the shoreline, carrying the smell of wet stone and distant pine. You stand alone beside the lantern, watching its reflection stretch across the lake like a path leading into darkness. And in a world filled with dragons, phoenixes, and enchanted castles, it is death that remains the greatest mystery of all. The strange thing is that Rowling never truly answered it. Again and again, throughout 7 books, death appears in different forms, different places, wearing different masks, and each time the answer seems to slip just beyond reach. Why did the Ministry of Magic build an entire department around a doorway nobody fully understood? The question begins deep beneath London, beneath the busy streets and red telephone boxes, far below the Ministry headquarters, where the Department of Mysteries occupies its hidden chambers. In June of 1996, Harry Potter, Hermione Granger, Ron Weasley, Ginny Weasley, Neville Longbottom, and Luna Lovegood entered those halls during one of the most important nights of the Second Wizarding War. They passed through circular rooms filled with strange experiments. Time was studied there. Prophecy was studied there. Love itself was studied there. Yet among all these mysteries stood something older and stranger than the rest. A tattered black veil hanging beneath a stone archway. The veil was already ancient when Ministry employees first encountered it. Rowling later revealed that the Death Chamber had existed before the Ministry itself. That detail changes everything. The Ministry of Magic was formally established in 1707, replacing the Wizards' Council as Britain's governing magical authority. Yet the chamber containing the veil was older still. Rather than creating the chamber, the Ministry appears to have been built around it. The Unspeakables did not construct this doorway. They inherited it. For centuries they studied it, measured it, observed it, and yet even after generations of research, nobody ever explained exactly what it was. The first clue comes from the people who could hear it. During Harry's visit to the Death Chamber, he noticed faint whispers emerging from behind the veil. The voices seemed distant, impossible to understand, yet unmistakably present. Luna Lovegood heard them too. Neville Longbottom heard something. Others did not. Hermione repeatedly insisted the whispers were only imagination. The difference matters. Harry and Luna both shared a painful connection to death. Harry had witnessed the deaths of Cedric Diggory and his parents' echoes through magical means. Luna had lost her mother, Pandora Lovegood, in a magical accident years earlier. The story never directly explains whether that connection allowed them to hear something real. The mystery deepens when you consider the architecture of the room itself. The chamber resembles an amphitheater. Stone benches descend in concentric circles toward the veil at the center. It looks less like a laboratory and more like a place where people once gathered. Perhaps they came to observe. Perhaps they came to mourn. Perhaps they came to perform rituals long forgotten by wizarding history. Canon never provides an answer. Yet the design suggests that whoever built the chamber believed the veil deserved attention from large numbers of people. It was not hidden away in a cupboard. It was placed on a stage. Many readers have wondered whether the veil functioned as a boundary between life and death. That idea seems obvious after the events of the Battle of the Department of Mysteries. During the duel between members of the Order of the Phoenix and Voldemort's Death Eaters, Bellatrix Lestrange struck Sirius black. In the books, the spell itself is never explicitly identified as the killing curse. Sirius staggered backward through the ancient archway and vanished beyond the fluttering veil. The moment was oddly quiet. No dramatic explosion followed. No visible wound appeared. He simply disappeared. One instant he was there, laughing in the middle of battle, and the next he was gone forever. Harry immediately believed Sirius could be rescued. That reaction reveals something important. When Cedric Diggory died in the graveyard of Little Hangleton a year earlier, Harry understood death at once. Cedric's body remained behind. The finality was obvious. Sirius's disappearance felt different. Harry chased Bellatrix through the Ministry because part of him believed Sirius might still be reachable. He shouted, he searched, he refused to accept what had happened. Only later did Dumbledore explain the truth. Sirius had gone beyond a place from which no living wizard could return. The veil was not merely a portal from one room to another. Crossing it meant something irreversible. Yet even Dumbledore's explanation leaves uncomfortable gaps. If the veil truly marks the border between life and death, why does it exist as a physical structure? Why can voices be heard through it? Why does a breeze stir the curtain when no windows exist nearby? Why did ancient witches and wizards construct an archway at all? Death in Harry Potter normally arrives through straightforward means. A wand casts Avada Kedavra. A basilisk's venom enters the bloodstream. A curse destroys the body. The veil follows different rules entirely. It behaves less like a weapon and more like a threshold. Some of the most enduring fan theories suggest that the veil predates recorded wizarding civilization. According to these theories, it could be a relic left behind by an unknown magical culture, one that understood death far better than later generations. There is no canon evidence proving this. Yet the theory persists because Rowling deliberately left the origin unanswered. Even the Unspeakables, whose entire profession revolves around studying mysteries, never reached a definitive explanation. Their title itself becomes meaningful here. They are called Unspeakables because certain truths cannot easily be put into words. Death may be one of them. What makes the death chamber remarkable is not that it provides answers. It does the opposite. Every detail seems designed to generate more questions. The whispers suggest communication, yet nobody understands the language. The veil moves, yet no visible force touches it. The archway stands in the center of one of the ministry's most protected locations, yet no guidebook explains its purpose. Through Sirius Black's death, readers receive their closest look at the boundary between life and whatever comes afterward, and somehow, after witnessing that moment, the boundary feels more mysterious than before. So the lantern continues to burn beside the lake. The castle remains silent. Far beneath London, the ancient veil hangs motionless in darkness, exactly where it stood before the ministry existed, and exactly where it remained after Sirius Black vanished beyond it. Generations of witches and wizards approached it searching for certainty. None returned with an answer. And as the night deepens around Hogwarts, another question begins to emerge from the shadows. If death can be crossed, even for a moment, then what exactly did Harry Potter see when the dead seemed to return and speak to him once again? How could Harry Potter walk into a forest carrying a stone and suddenly speak with the dead? The question emerges years after Sirius Black vanished beyond the veil. It begins with a small object hidden inside a golden snitch, an object that spent generations passing silently through history before reaching Harry's hands. The Resurrection Stone first appears openly in 1998, during the final hours of the Second Wizarding War, but its story stretches back much further. Long before Harry ever touched it, the stone belonged to Cadmus Peverell, the middle brother from The Tale of the Three Brothers. According to the story preserved in the Tales of Beedle the Bard, Cadmus used the stone to recall a woman he had loved and lost. The reunion ended in tragedy, and Cadmus eventually chose death over life. For most of the series, Harry remains unaware that the Resurrection Stone even exists. The object travels through history under another identity. It becomes set within the ring of Marvolo Gaunt, descendant of Cadmus Peverell and grandfather of Tom Riddle. Decades later, Voldemort recovers the ring while exploring his family's history. He recognizes its importance as an heirloom, but apparently never discovers that it is one of the Deathly Hallows. Instead, he transforms it into a Horcrux. The irony is striking. The wizard, most obsessed with conquering death, possessed the Resurrection Stone and never understood what he held. The ring eventually reaches Albus Dumbledore. By the summer of 1996, Dumbledore has already pieced together much of the mystery surrounding Voldemort's Horcruxes. When he finds the Gaunt ring, however, something unexpected happens. The wisest wizard of the age makes a catastrophic mistake. He later admits that the sight of the Resurrection Stone overwhelmed him. In that moment, he was not thinking like a strategist hunting Horcruxes. He was thinking of Ariana Dumbledore, his sister, whose death haunted him for the rest of his life. Dumbledore put on the cursed ring, hoping to see the dead again, and nearly lost his own life as a result. That single mistake reveals something important about death in Harry Potter. Even Dumbledore, who often speaks calmly about mortality, remains vulnerable to grief. Throughout the books, he tells Harry that death is a natural part of life. He famously describes it as the next great adventure. Yet when faced with the possibility of seeing Ariana, Kendra, and Percival Dumbledore once more, he abandons caution. Severus Snape later contains the curse spreading through Dumbledore's hand, but the damage is permanent. The encounter ultimately contributes to Dumbledore's death less than a year later. The resurrection stone does not simply tempt ordinary people, it tempts even the greatest among them. The mystery reaches its most important moment in the Forbidden Forest on the night of May 2nd, 1998. Voldemort has taken control of Hogwarts grounds. The Battle of Hogwarts rages around the castle. Harry has learned from Snape's memories that a fragment of Voldemort's soul lives inside him. He understands what must happen next. Alone, carrying the golden snitch, Dumbledore left him. He walks into the forest to surrender himself. As he approaches the place where Voldemort waits, the words, "I open at the close," reveal their meaning. The snitch opens and the resurrection stone falls into Harry's palm. What happened next remains one of the most beautiful and mysterious scenes in the entire series. Harry turns the stone 3 times. Immediately 4 figures appear around him. James Potter walks beside his son. Lily Potter smiles at him. Sirius Black emerges from the darkness. Remus Lupin joins them as well, only weeks after his death during the Battle of Hogwarts. These are not ghosts. Harry can see them clearly. He speaks with them. They answer. They accompany him toward what he believes will be his own death. The details matter. Harry asks Sirius whether dying hurts. Sirius answers gently. Harry asks whether they will stay with him. They promise they will remain until the end. None of them speak like memories replaying old conversations. They respond directly to Harry's questions. They display awareness of present events. Remus asks Harry to tell his son, Teddy Lupin, how proud he was to have known him. James tells Harry they are all close by. The interaction feels startlingly real, yet Rowling never fully explains what Harry is experiencing. The tale of the 3 brothers offers one interpretation. In the story, Cadmus's lost bride returns from beyond death, but remains separated from the living world. She is visible, yet distant, present, yet unreachable. The result drives Cadmus into despair. Harry's experience differs significantly. James, Lily, Sirius, and Remus seem comforting rather than tragic. They do not urge Harry to follow them. They do not lure him into death. Instead, they help him find the courage to continue. The contrast raises a difficult question. Did Harry witness the same phenomenon Cadmus encountered, or something entirely different? Some readers believe the resurrection stone genuinely summons spirits from the afterlife. This interpretation fits the straightforward reading of the Hallows legend. Others argue that the stone creates manifestations drawn from memory, love, and the soul of the user. Dumbledore himself later tells Harry that the Hallows are powerful magical objects created by exceptionally gifted wizards, not necessarily gifts from death itself. If Dumbledore is correct, then the stone's function may be magical rather than supernatural. Yet that explanation creates new problems. How could a magical projection know things Harry himself did not know? How could Remus express concerns about Teddy's future? The conversation contains information beyond Harry's own memories. Another possibility emerges when you compare the resurrection stone to ghosts. Nearly Headless Nick explains in Order of the Phoenix that ghosts are only imprints of departed witches and wizards. They remain behind because they fear moving on. Nick describes himself as a shadow of a former person. The figures Harry encounters in the forest feel completely different. James is warm. Lily radiates affection. Sirius retains his humor. Remus carries wisdom and calm. They seem more complete than ghosts. If ghosts are fragments left behind, perhaps the stone touches something deeper. The strangest detail often goes unnoticed. Once Harry reaches Voldemort, he drops the resurrection stone into the forest. He never retrieves it. The stone disappears somewhere among leaves, roots, and centuries of fallen branches. Unlike the Elder Wand, whose fate becomes a major concern, the resurrection stone simply vanishes from the story. One of the most powerful magical objects ever created is lost in the woods near Hogwarts. Nobody searches for it. Nobody claims it. Its final resting place remains unknown. Perhaps that ending is intentional. The stone's purpose was never to eliminate death. It did not resurrect James Potter. It did not restore Sirius Black to life. It offered comfort, courage, and understanding during a single crucial moment. Yet the central mystery remains unsolved. Were those truly the dead returning to walk beside Harry? Were they manifestations of a deeper magic tied to love and memory? Rowling never settles the question. And as Harry falls beneath Voldemort's killing curse moments later, another mystery opens before him, stranger than any he has faced before. For a brief time, he enters a place that looks like King's Cross Station, and there he meets both Death and Dumbledore in a form nobody fully understands. If Harry Potter truly died in the Forbidden Forest, then who decided he could come back? The question hangs over one of the most unusual chapters Rowling ever wrote. On the night of May 2nd, 1998, Voldemort casts the killing curse directly at Harry. There is no shield charm, no last-second rescue, no twin core effect like the duel in Little Hangleton Graveyard. Harry willingly accepts the curse and falls. Moments earlier, he had walked through the forest, surrounded by the figures summoned by the resurrection stone. Moments later, he finds himself somewhere entirely different, standing in a place that resembles King's Cross Station, and yet clearly is not King's Cross at all. The setting is remarkable for its simplicity. Throughout the series, magical locations tend to overflow with detail. Hogwarts contains moving staircases, enchanted portraits, secret passages, ghosts, hidden chambers, and magical creatures. The Ministry of Magic stretches across entire underground levels. Gringotts descends deep beneath London through vaults guarded by dragons and curses. Yet when Harry opens his eyes after Voldemort's curse, he finds only endless whiteness. The floor gleams. The air feels clean. There are no walls, no visible horizon, and somewhere nearby sits Albus Dumbledore, calm and waiting. Dumbledore himself presents the first mystery. The headmaster died nearly a year earlier atop the astronomy tower on June 30th, 1997. Severus Snape killed him according to a plan the two men had arranged together. Harry witnessed the event from beneath his invisibility cloak and believed for months that Snape had betrayed Dumbledore. By the time Harry enters this strange King's Cross, however, he knows the truth. He has viewed Snape's memories in the pensive. He understands the sacrifices both men made. Yet the Dumbledore he encounters here is not behaving like a memory. He answers questions Harry has not yet fully formed. He explains events Harry only partially understands. Once again, the line between vision and reality becomes difficult to define. Then there is the creature beneath the bench. Harry notices it almost immediately. Curled on the floor lies a small, naked, flayed-looking being that resembles a wounded child. It whimpers softly. It appears helpless. Harry feels pity for it. At the same time, he feels revulsion and horror. Dumbledore identifies it indirectly. The creature represents what remains of the fragment of Voldemort's soul that attached itself to Harry on the night James and Lily Potter died in Godric's Hollow in October 1981. When Voldemort's curse rebounded from infant Harry, a piece of his damaged soul broke away and lodged inside the boy. For 17 years, Harry carried it unknowingly. The image raises one of the darkest questions in the entire series. Why does a damaged soul look like that? Rowling never provides a detailed explanation. Readers know from Horace Slughorn's conversation with Tom Riddle that murder tears the soul apart. We know Voldemort committed enough murders to create multiple Horcruxes. Tom Riddle's diary, Marvolo Gaunt's ring, Salazar Slytherin's locket, Helga Hufflepuff's cup, Rowena Ravenclaw's diadem, Harry Potter himself by accident, and Nagini the snake. We know repeated soul-splitting horrified even Slughorn, who had studied advanced dark magic for decades. Yet the actual consequences remain largely hidden. The pitiful creature at King's Cross is one of the few glimpses readers ever receive. Dumbledore explains that Voldemort's curse destroyed the soul fragment inside Harry rather than Harry himself. This outcome depended on several unusual conditions. Harry carried Lily Potter's sacrificial protection in his blood. Voldemort used Harry's blood during his rebirth ritual in the graveyard of Little Hangleton in 1995. As Dumbledore later explains, Voldemort unknowingly tethered Harry to life by doing so. The logic is complex. Even Harry struggles to follow every detail. Yet the central point is clear. Voldemort attacked what he believed was Harry and instead destroyed part of himself. The conversation that follows feels unlike any other exchange in the books. Harry asks Dumbledore questions he has carried for years. Why did Dumbledore never tell him everything? Why was he raised to face this fate? Why did Snape have to endure such misery? Dumbledore answers with unusual openness. He admits mistakes. He acknowledges his own flaws. He speaks not as the legendary headmaster of Hogwarts, but as an old man looking back on a life marked by regret as well as achievement. For a brief moment, the distance between mentor and student disappears. Yet the greatest mystery remains unresolved. Where is this conversation taking place? Harry asks directly whether it is real or simply happening inside his head. Dumbledore's answer has become one of the most famous lines in the series. He asks why something happening inside Harry's head should mean it is not real. The response solves nothing. Instead, it deepens the mystery. Rowling deliberately refuses to choose between a psychological experience and a spiritual one. The scene exists in a space where both explanations remain possible. Years after the books were published, Rowling described King's Cross as a form of limbo. Even that word raises additional questions. Limbo suggests a place between states, neither fully life nor fully death. Harry is not entirely alive during this encounter, yet he is not permanently dead either. He stands at a crossroads. One path leads back to Hogwarts, where the battle continues. The other leads somewhere unknown. Dumbledore tells him the choice belongs entirely to him. No prophecy forces the decision. No magical contract compels him. Harry alone must choose. Notice how different this is from the veil in the Department of Mysteries. Sirius Black passes beyond the veil and never returns. Harry reaches King's Cross and receives an option. The contrast suggests that death in Rowling's world may not be a single experience. Different magical circumstances create different outcomes. A wizard struck down in battle experiences one thing. A soul damaged by Horcruxes experiences another. A chosen sacrifice may open yet another path. The afterlife, if such a thing exists in Harry Potter, appears far more complicated than a simple doorway. Some fan theories propose that King's Cross reflects Harry's own expectations. Growing up, trains and stations shaped his entire magical life. Platform 9 3/4 marked the boundary between the ordinary world and the wizarding one. Every September, Hogwarts Express journeys began there. According to this theory, Harry's mind translated an incomprehensible spiritual reality into a familiar image. It is an elegant idea, yet it remains only a theory. Rowling never confirms it, and Dumbledore's knowledge within the scene continues to challenge purely psychological explanations. Eventually, Harry chooses to return. He awakens among the roots and leaves of the Forbidden Forest, while Voldemort and his followers celebrate what they believe is victory. Narcissa Malfoy approaches to verify his death. Harry whispers that Draco is alive. Narcissa lies to Voldemort and declares Harry dead. The battle moves toward its final stage, yet the mystery of King's Cross remains behind like a half-remembered dream. Was Harry standing at the edge of the true afterlife? Did he meet the genuine spirit of Albus Dumbledore? Or did the deepest layers of magic and consciousness briefly overlap? Rowling leaves the questions unanswered, and as Harry returns to the living world, another puzzle begins to emerge. If souls can move on, if some can appear through the resurrection stone, and if Harry could meet Dumbledore in limbo, then why do certain witches and wizards remain behind as ghosts, while others vanish forever? If fear of death creates ghosts, why did so many frightened witches and wizards never return at all? The question first receives an answer in the autumn of 1995, shortly after the death of Sirius Black. Harry is desperate. Grief follows him through the corridors of Hogwarts. He searches for any possibility that Sirius might somehow reappear. It is then that he speaks with nearly headless Nick, the Gryffindor ghost who has drifted through the castle for centuries. Their conversation becomes one of the most revealing discussions about death in the entire series, and yet it leaves almost as many mysteries as it resolves. Nick explains that not everyone can become a ghost. According to him, only a witch or wizard who fears death may choose to leave behind an imprint of themselves. He describes ghosts as pale copies, shadows of people who once lived. Nick himself made that choice because he was afraid to move on. The decision has consequences. He remains trapped in a state between worlds, neither truly alive nor fully gone. When Harry asks whether Sirius might return as a ghost, Nick answers immediately. Sirius would never have chosen such an existence. That statement tells you something profound about Sirius Black. Throughout his life, Sirius faced danger directly. He left the pureblood ideals of the House of Black while still young. He joined the Order of the Phoenix during the First Wizarding War. He endured 12 years in Azkaban without surrendering his identity. Even after escaping prison, he repeatedly risked capture to help Harry. Nick's certainty suggests that Sirius possessed the courage to embrace whatever came after death rather than cling to an incomplete existence. Yet the answer creates another mystery. If courage determines who moves on, why do some seemingly brave individuals remain as ghosts? Consider the ghosts of Hogwarts themselves. Nearly headless Nick, whose full name was Sir Nicholas de Mimsey Porpington, died in 1492 after a botched execution. 45 axe blows were required because the executioner's blade was blunt. The memory still embarrasses him centuries later. The fat friar of Hufflepuff House lived as a cheerful medieval cleric known for healing illnesses with magic. The Grey Lady was Helena Ravenclaw, daughter of Rowena Ravenclaw herself. The Bloody Baron, Slytherin's ghost, murdered Helena before taking his own life in remorse. Each ghost arrived at death under different circumstances, yet all chose the same strange fate. Helena Ravenclaw's story is especially revealing. Before her death, she stole her mother's diadem and fled to Albania. Rowena Ravenclaw became ill and longed to see her daughter again. The Bloody Baron was sent to retrieve Helena. Instead, a tragic confrontation unfolded in a forest. Helena refused to return. The Baron, consumed by love and rage, stabbed her to death. Realizing what he had done, he turned the knife upon himself. Both eventually returned as ghosts to Hogwarts. Their continued existence suggests unfinished emotional burdens can play a role in the choice. Yet other characters with equally powerful regrets never become ghosts. Albus Dumbledore spent decades haunted by Ariana's death. Severus Snape carried guilt, grief, and love for most of his life. Remus Lupin died while leaving behind an infant son. Fred Weasley died suddenly during the Battle of Hogwarts, separated forever from George. None returned as ghosts. Their absence is striking. If regret alone were enough, the castle might be crowded with spirits far beyond the handful that actually inhabit its halls. The behavior of ghosts introduces even more uncertainty. Hogwarts ghosts remember their pasts. They hold conversations. They form friendships and rivalries. Peeves torments them. Students speak with them. Yet ghosts cannot truly learn new things in the way living people do. They seem suspended, repeating patterns established long ago. Professor Binns demonstrates this perfectly. After dying in his sleep, he simply rose from his armchair and continued teaching history of magic as though nothing had happened. Decade after decade passes, and Binns remains essentially unchanged. The physical rules governing ghosts are equally strange. They can pass through walls, float above staircases, and drift through locked doors, yet they still interact with certain magical objects. Nearly headless Nick attends the Death Day party held on October 31st, 1992, marking 500 years since his execution. Ghosts consume no real food, but they gather around rotten fish and spoiled banquets because the strong smells allow them to experience faint traces of flavor. It is one of the oddest details Rowling ever included. Even in death, these spirits seem trapped between sensation and absence. Then there are the moments when ghosts reveal limitations they themselves do not fully understand. Nick cannot tell Harry what lies beyond death because he never went there. That admission matters. Ghosts are not witnesses returning from the afterlife. They are individuals who refuse to continue the journey. In other words, every ghost in Hogwarts is uniquely unqualified to answer the question Harry most wants answered. They stand beside the doorway but never crossed it. Their knowledge ends exactly where the mystery begins. The contrast between ghosts and the figures summoned by the resurrection stone becomes impossible to ignore. Nick describes himself as a faded imprint. James Potter and Lily Potter appeared vivid and complete. The Grey Lady remains bound to Hogwarts. The spirits Harry encounters in the Forbidden Forest seem free. Ghosts linger in the world of the living. The Resurrection Stone appears connected to something beyond it. Rowling never directly compares the two phenomena, but the differences suggest they originate from entirely separate magical processes. One subtle detail often escapes notice. Ghosts are almost exclusively associated with Hogwarts. Outside the castle, very few appear in the story. Moaning Myrtle haunts plumbing systems because she was murdered by the basilisk in 1943. The Hogwarts ghosts populate common rooms, corridors, and towers. Yet the wizarding world at large seems remarkably free of spirits. If becoming a ghost is truly a matter of personal choice, why are there not thousands wandering Britain? Why do graveyards remain empty of spectral residents? The scarcity suggests that remaining behind is extraordinarily rare. A popular fan theory argues that becoming a ghost requires more than fear. According to this idea, a witch or wizard must also possess a particular magical disposition, one that allows consciousness to leave an imprint upon the world. Canon never confirms this, yet it would explain why countless frightened people disappear while only a few persist. Whatever the truth, Rowling carefully avoids establishing a clear formula. The uncertainty preserves the mystery. Death remains larger than any magical rule book. And so the castle settles into silence once more. Nearly headless Nick glides through stone walls. The Grey Lady wanders Ravenclaw Tower carrying centuries of sorrow. The Bloody Baron drifts through the dungeons, chains rattling softly in the darkness. They have lingered for generations, neither fully present nor entirely absent. Yet their existence raises a deeper question that reaches back into the oldest legends of the wizarding world. If ghosts are only shadows, then what were the Deathly Hallows really designed to accomplish? And why do all roads leading toward death seem to converge upon three siblings who lived centuries before Hogwarts? Ghosts ever began their endless wandering. Why did three magical objects become so deeply connected to death that even Albus Dumbledore could not completely explain them? The question carries us backward through centuries, long before Voldemort, long before Harry Potter, and even before the establishment of the Ministry of Magic in 1707. The story begins with a collection of wizarding fairy tales, known as the Tales of Beedle the Bard. Among them is one particular legend, the tale of the three brothers. Most wizarding children grow up hearing it as a bedtime story. Yet, unlike most fairy tales, this one contains objects that unquestionably exist. According to the legend, three brothers were traveling along a dangerous river when they used magic to create a bridge. Death itself appeared before them, angry that they had escaped its trap. Seeking to deceive them, Death offered each brother a reward. Antioch Peveril requested the most powerful wand ever made. Cadmus Peveril asked for the ability to recall the dead. Ignotus Peveril chose something entirely different. He asked for a cloak that would allow its wearer to hide even from Death's gaze. Whether Death was a literal being or a symbolic invention remains one of the central mysteries of the story. For generations, Most witches and wizards dismissed the tale as fiction. Hermione Granger certainly did. Even after discovering the strange symbol associated with the Hallows, she insisted that magical artifacts could explain the legend without requiring a supernatural figure called Death. Xenophilius Lovegood disagreed completely. During Harry, Ron, and Hermione's visit to the Lovegood home in March of 1998, Xenophilius passionately argued that the Hallows were real and that death itself had gifted them to the brothers. The conversation reveals a fascinating divide within the wizarding world. Some see the Hallows as history, others see them as myth. The evidence becomes difficult to ignore when you examine the objects individually. The Elder Wand possesses a documented history stretching back centuries. Its trail runs through duels, murders, thefts, and transfers of allegiance. Grigorovich the Wand-maker owned it for a time. Gellert Grindelwald stole it from Grigorovich. Albus Dumbledore defeated Grindelwald in their legendary 1945 duel. Draco Malfoy unknowingly became its master by disarming Dumbledore atop the astronomy tower in 1997. Harry Potter ultimately gained its allegiance after taking Draco's wand at Malfoy Manor. These events are not legend. They are verifiable history. The Resurrection Stone presents a similar challenge. Unlike the Elder Wand, it remains hidden for most of the story, yet its powers appear genuine. Dumbledore identifies it within Marvolo Gaunt's ring. Harry uses it in the Forbidden Forest. The stone performs exactly the function described in the ancient tale. It summons the dead, or something remarkably close to them. Whether the summoned figures are true spirits, magical echoes, or manifestations of memory remains uncertain. What matters is that the artifact behaves precisely as the legend predicts. Then there is the invisibility cloak inherited by Harry from his father. At first glance, it seems less impressive than the other Hallows. Invisibility cloaks already exist throughout the wizarding world, yet Harry's cloak proves unique. Most cloaks gradually lose their enchantments. Spells can weaken them. Time can damage them. Harry's cloak remains flawless after centuries. More importantly, it resists magical detection in ways ordinary cloaks cannot. Alastor Moody's magical eye appears capable of seeing through it in the books, yet the cloak repeatedly demonstrates extraordinary resilience unmatched by any known equivalent. The existence of the Hallows creates a difficult problem for Dumbledore's interpretation. Dumbledore believed the Peverell brothers were brilliant inventors rather than recipients of gifts from death. It is a sensible explanation. Wizards have created astonishing magical objects before. The founders of Hogwarts built a castle filled with enchantments that endured for 1,000 years. Merlin's achievements became legendary. The Department of Mystery Studies forces barely understood even today. Why could 3 exceptionally gifted brothers not have crafted equally extraordinary artifacts? The theory fits the evidence, yet it leaves one lingering question unanswered. Why are all 3 objects linked specifically to death? Antioch's wand promises power over enemies. Cadmus's stone reaches toward the dead. Ignotus's cloak conceals its wearer from mortality itself. Individually, each object touches a different aspect of humanity's oldest fear. Together they form a pattern. The Elder Wand reflects the desire to dominate death through strength. The Resurrection Stone reflects the desire to reverse death through reunion. The invisibility cloak reflects the desire to avoid death altogether. The symbolism is almost too precise to dismiss. The lives of the Peveril brothers deepen the mystery further. Antioch, intoxicated by the power of the Elder Wand, boasted openly about his invincibility. According to the legend, another wizard murdered him in his sleep and stole the wand. Cadmus used the resurrection stone to recall a woman he loved, only to discover she remained separated from the living world. Unable to bear the distance, he eventually took his own life. Only Ignotus achieved a peaceful ending. He passed the cloak to his son and greeted death as an old friend. The story functions as a moral lesson, yet it also mirrors the history of the Hallows themselves. One of Rowling's most elegant revelations occurs when the Peverils emerge from legend into documented genealogy. The brothers were not fictional. Their names appear in historical records. Harry Potter descends from Ignotus Peveril through his father's family. Voldemort descends from Cadmus Peveril through the Gaunt line. Suddenly, the conflict between Harry and Voldemort acquires another layer. One heir inherits the cloak, the other seeks immortality through Horcruxes. Both are connected by blood to the same ancient family whose story revolves around death. This connection becomes even more striking when you consider Voldemort's relationship with the Hallows. He spends his entire life attempting to escape mortality. He creates Horcruxes. He murders repeatedly. He hunts the Elder Wand, believing it will make him invincible. Yet he never seeks the Resurrection Stone. He never understands its significance, nor does he recognize Harry's invisibility cloak as a Hallow. The irony is extraordinary. The wizard, most obsessed with defeating death, never comprehends the full nature of the three objects most closely associated with it. Some readers believe the Hallows represent three flawed approaches to mortality. Power fails Antioch. Grief destroys Cadmus. Acceptance guides Ignotus. Others argue that the Hallows themselves are neither good nor evil, merely tools revealing the character of those who possess them. Both interpretations fit comfortably within canon. Rowling leaves room for each. What she never clarifies is the deeper origin of the Hallows. Were they simply magical inventions? Were they inspired by knowledge now lost? Did the Peverils discover secrets about death that later generations forgot? The uncertainty becomes even more intriguing when you remember the veil hidden beneath the ministry. An ancient structure tied to death existed before modern magical government. The Hallows emerged from the medieval period, carrying powers that seem almost supernatural. Ghosts linger between worlds. The resurrection stone reaches toward the dead. Taken together, these mysteries suggest that wizarding knowledge about death was once far greater than what survives in Harry's era. Somewhere in the distant past, pieces of understanding were lost. And as the night wind drifts across the waters below Hogwarts, the story turns toward something darker. The Hallows may offer glimpses of mortality, but another creature attacks the soul itself. In the prison fortress of Azkaban, guarded by hooded beings that feed on despair, a different mystery waits. Because if the soul can survive death, what happens when something consumes it before death ever arrives? What happens to a human soul after a Dementor's kiss? And why does nobody in the wizarding world seem able to bring it back? The question takes us away from ancient legends and into one of the bleakest places Rowling ever created. Far out in the cold waters of the North Sea stands Azkaban, the wizarding prison of Britain. Long before Harry Potter was born, long before Voldemort's first rise to power, prisoners were already being sent there to endure a punishment unlike any known in the Muggle world. The stone fortress itself was terrible enough. Yet the true horror came from its guards. The Dementors did not carry wands, wear uniforms, or enforce rules through ordinary violence. They fed upon human happiness. Harry first encounters a Dementor aboard the Hogwarts Express on September 1st, 1993. The effect is immediate and devastating. As the creature enters the compartment, warmth drains from the air. The lights dim. Harry hears a woman screaming. He loses consciousness. Nobody else in the compartment experiences the attack with the same intensity because nobody else carries Harry's particular history. The screams belong to Lily Potter on the night she died in Godric's Hollow. The Dementor does not create the memory. It drags it to the surface. From that moment onward, Harry's relationship with these creatures becomes deeply personal. Professor Remus Lupin later provides one of the clearest explanations in the series. Dementors, he says, feed on every positive emotion they can find. They consume peace, hope, joy, and comfort until nothing remains except the worst experiences a person has ever endured. This ability alone makes them frightening. Yet Rowling introduces something far worse. When commanded to do so, a Dementor can perform the kiss. The creature presses its mouth against a victim and extracts the soul itself. What remains behind is not technically dead. The body continues to live. The mind remains. But the essential self is gone. Notice how unusual this concept is within the wider magical world. Wizards can heal broken bones overnight. Magical injuries that would cripple a Muggle can often be repaired. Even devastating curses sometimes have counter curses. Mandrake Restorative Draft reverses petrification. Phoenix tears heal basilisk venom. Time Turners once allowed limited manipulation of time itself. Yet no spell, potion, artifact, or magical creature is ever mentioned as a cure for a Dementor's kiss. The wizarding world treats it as final, more final in some ways than death itself. The most famous victim of the kiss is Barty Crouch Jr. After Harry survives the Tri-Wizard tournament in June of 1995 and returns from the graveyard at Little Hangleton, Crouch is captured and questioned. Under the effects of Veritaserum, he reveals the truth behind Voldemort's plan. He explains how he escaped Azkaban. He describes impersonating Alastor Moody through Polyjuice Potion. He confirms Voldemort's return. Then Cornelius Fudge arrives at Hogwarts, accompanied by a Dementor. Before Crouch can testify publicly, the Dementor performs the kiss. The Ministry loses its most important witness in an instant. The scene reveals something disturbing about the wizarding world's understanding of souls. Nobody present attempts a rescue. Dumbledore is furious, but even he does not suggest that Crouch's soul might be recovered. The tragedy lies not merely in the loss of evidence. It lies in the assumption that the loss is irreversible. For all Dumbledore's knowledge, for all the resources of Hogwarts and the Ministry, there appears to be no path back. Once the soul is taken, the story ends. Yet where does the soul actually go? Rowling never answers. This silence is remarkable because The series repeatedly explores what happens after ordinary death. Ghosts exist. The resurrection stone summons something resembling the dead. The veil whispers with distant voices. King's Cross offers a glimpse of limbo. Souls clearly continue in some form beyond physical death. The Dementor's Kiss introduces a completely different process. The soul is not moving onward, it's being removed. But removed to where? Consumed? Imprisoned? Destroyed? The books never say. One popular fan theory suggests that Dementors do not truly destroy souls, but trap them within themselves. The theory emerges from the creature's behavior. Dementors seem endlessly hungry. They congregate where suffering is greatest. They multiply during periods of fear and instability. During Voldemort's second rise, they abandon Azkaban and openly support his regime. Some readers imagine them as living prisons carrying countless stolen souls within their cloaks. There is no canon evidence confirming this idea. Yet the theory persists because the alternative is even more unsettling. True annihilation would represent a fate unknown elsewhere in Rowling's world. The mystery becomes deeper when you compare Dementors to another soul-related phenomenon, Horcruxes. Voldemort tears his own soul apart through murder. Dementors remove souls from others. Both processes involve profound damage to the spiritual self, yet the outcomes appear entirely different. Voldemort remains conscious despite mutilating his soul repeatedly. Victims of the kiss become empty shells. The contrast suggests that the soul in Harry Potter possesses layers and properties never fully described. Characters understand enough to fear soul damage, but not enough to explain it comprehensively. Dementors themselves remain mysterious. Rowling eventually revealed that they breed in places of decay and despair. That explanation answers one question while raising another. How does a creature that feeds upon emotion reproduce? Dragons lay eggs. Hippogriffs mate. Acromantulas build colonies. Dementors follow none of these patterns. Their existence feels almost unnatural, as though they belong to a category separate from ordinary magical beasts. Even Newt Scamander's classification system struggles to accommodate them. They behave less like animals and more like manifestations of suffering, given physical form. Harry's ability to resist Dementors through the Patronus charm adds another layer. The Patronus is not fueled by magical power alone. It requires a happy memory. During his lessons with Lupin in 1993 and 1994, Harry learns to focus on moments of genuine joy. Eventually, he produces a corporeal stag Patronus, identical to the Patronus of his father, James Potter. This detail matters because it reveals a direct connection between memory, emotion, and the soul. Positive experiences possess measurable magical force. The soul is not an abstract concept. It interacts with magic constantly. The final battles of the Second Wizarding War offer a glimpse of what happens when fear spreads across an entire society. Dementors join Voldemort's forces. They swarm over Hogwarts during the Battle of Hogwarts on May 2nd, 1998. Panic spreads through defenders as the creatures advance. Then something remarkable happens. Harry later sees countless Patronuses rising across the grounds. Professors, students, and members of the Order of the Phoenix push back the darkness together. Hope itself becomes a weapon. The scene suggests that while the soul can be threatened, it is not helpless. Still, the central mystery survives untouched. The wizarding world knows how to repel dementors. It knows how to imprison them. It knows how to defend against them. What it does not know is how to undo the damage once the kiss has occurred. Somewhere between life and death lies a state worse than either, a condition so feared that even hardened wizards rarely discuss it. And that silence leads naturally toward another unanswered question. Because if dementors can damage the soul from the outside, what happens when someone tears apart his own soul from within again and again until almost nothing remains? What does a soul actually look like after it has been torn apart? And why did even the darkest books in Hogwarts avoid explaining the process in detail? The question leads directly to Tom Marvolo Riddle, the wizard who feared death more than any other character in the series. Voldemort's obsession with immortality shaped nearly every major event in modern wizarding history. He did not merely seek a longer life. He wanted permanence. He wanted certainty. Most importantly, he wanted to eliminate the possibility of death altogether. In pursuing that goal, he crossed boundaries that even experienced dark wizards considered unthinkable. The first clear glimpse of this forbidden knowledge appears in a memory from Horace Slughorn. During his years as a student at Hogwarts in the 1940s, Tom Riddle approached Slughorn with questions about Horcruxes. The conversation took place long before Voldemort became the Dark Lord feared across Britain. At the time, he was still handsome, brilliant, charming, and outwardly polite. Yet even then, something unsettling lurked beneath the surface. Slughorn's reaction reveals how serious the subject was. The usually confident potions master became visibly uncomfortable almost immediately. A Horcrux, Slughorn explained, is created when a wizard hides a fragment of his soul inside an external object. The process requires murder because killing tears the soul apart. This detail is among the clearest pieces of canon Rowling provides. Murder is not merely evil behavior. It produces a literal spiritual wound. Yet when Tom presses for details, Slughorn refuses to continue. Even before he realizes how dangerous his student will become, he understands that certain knowledge should remain buried. The remarkable thing is that Rowling never allows readers to hear the full explanation either. When Harry and Dumbledore later investigate Voldemort's past through pensive memories, a pattern begins to emerge. Each Horcrux connects to a significant murder. Tom Riddle's diary was likely linked to the murder of Myrtle Warren, later known as Moaning Myrtle, in 1943. Marvolo Gaunt's ring became tied to the murder of Tom Riddle Sr. Salazar Slytherin's locket, Helga Hufflepuff's cup, and Rowena Ravenclaw's diadem followed. Nagini became a Horcrux after another murder years later. Then there was Harry himself, the accidental Horcrux created on the night Voldemort attacked Godric's Hollow in October 1981. The number matters. Voldemort did not simply create Horcruxes. He deliberately sought 7 pieces of soul, believing 7 to be the most powerfully magical number. Yet the plan failed in a way he never understood. By creating an accidental Horcrux in Harry, he divided himself further than intended. The irony is extraordinary. The wizard who prided himself on control committed perhaps the most important magical mistake in the series. His soul became so unstable that fragments could detach without his awareness. As the years passed, Voldemort's appearance changed dramatically. In his youth, Tom Riddle resembled a handsome aristocrat. Witnesses described him as charming and handsome enough to win trust easily. By the time of the First Wizarding War, however, his features had already begun to distort. His eyes reddened. His face grew pale and wax-like, his nose flattened into snake-like slits. The transformation was gradual but unmistakable. Rowling strongly implies that repeated soul damage contributed to these physical changes. Yet nobody ever explains the exact mechanics. Did each Horcrux remove a specific portion of humanity? Did emotional capacities disappear along with the fragments? Could Voldemort still experience ordinary feelings in the way other people could? Dumbledore believed that Voldemort's inability to understand love became one of his greatest weaknesses. However, whether that limitation resulted from soul damage or from choices made long before creating Horcruxes remains unclear. Rowling deliberately leaves room for interpretation. The most disturbing clue arrives in King's Cross after Harry is struck by the killing curse. Beneath a bench lies the mutilated creature representing the fragment of Voldemort's soul that had lived inside Harry. It whimpers, it suffers, it appears helpless and broken. Harry instinctively wants to help it, yet Dumbledore tells him there is nothing they can do. That statement carries enormous weight. Throughout the series, Dumbledore believes in redemption. He offers second chances repeatedly. He trusts Snape despite enormous risks. He hopes Draco Malfoy can avoid becoming a killer. Yet when confronted with the ruined fragment of Voldemort's soul, even Dumbledore sees no remedy. This raises one of the darkest possibilities in the entire Harry Potter universe. What if soul damage can reach a point beyond repair? Rowling later stated outside the novels that remorse can heal a damaged soul. Genuine remorse, however, is extraordinarily painful for the individual involved. Voldemort never experiences such remorse. He never truly regrets his crimes. As a result, the possibility of healing remains permanently out of reach. The path exists in theory, but not for the man who most desperately needs it. The contrast between Voldemort and Harry becomes especially important here. Harry repeatedly encounters death and loss. He loses Cedric Diggory, Sirius Black, Albus Dumbledore, Mad-Eye Moody, Dobby, Fred Weasley, Remus Lupin, Nymphadora Tonks, and many others. Yet these experiences deepen his humanity rather than diminish it. Voldemort responds to the fear of death by fragmenting himself. Harry responds by accepting mortality. The difference shapes their destinies. One attempts to escape death at any cost. The other eventually walks into the forbidden forest, prepared to die, if necessary. Another mystery emerges when you compare Horcruxes to ghosts. Ghosts leave behind imprints of complete personalities. Nearly headless Nick retains memories, preferences, and emotions. The Bloody Baron remembers centuries-old guilt. Helena Ravenclaw recalls events from medieval Britain. Horcrux fragments behave differently. Tom Riddle's diary contains intelligence and memory, yet it is incomplete. The fragment inside Harry influences emotions and perceptions, but never develops into a full person. Soul fragments seem capable of preserving identity, but only partially. Rowling never establishes where the dividing line lies. A popular fan theory suggests that Voldemort's soul became increasingly unstable with each division, eventually affecting his judgment. Supporters point to decisions that appear irrational, particularly during the Second Wizarding War. They argue that a soul shattered multiple times cannot function normally. Canon never confirms this interpretation. Voldemort remains dangerous, intelligent, and capable of long-term planning throughout the series. Yet the theory persists because it offers a possible explanation for why a brilliant wizard repeatedly misunderstands the power of love, loyalty, and sacrifice. By the time Voldemort dies in the Great Hall on May 2nd, 1998, his body collapses like that of any ordinary man. No dramatic transformation follows. No hidden reserve of immortality remains. The Horcruxes are gone. The soul fragments are destroyed. For the first time since his youth, Tom Riddle faces the same fate as everyone else. Yet Rowling never reveals what happens next. Does his damaged soul move on? Does it remain trapped in the condition represented by the creature at King's Cross? The answer is left unresolved. And perhaps that uncertainty is fitting. Every attempt to understand death in the wizarding world eventually encounters a wall. The veil whispers but never explains. Ghosts remain but cannot describe what lies beyond. The Resurrection Stone offers comfort without certainty. Horcruxes reveal how a soul can be broken, but not exactly what a soul is. As the night deepens over Hogwarts and the castle windows glow above the lake, our attention turns toward an older mystery still. Because long before Voldemort tore apart his soul, one family seemed uniquely connected to nearly every secret surrounding death. Their name was Peveril, and their story reaches back into the shadows of the Middle Ages. How did a single medieval family become connected to nearly every major mystery about death in the wizarding world? The question leads far beyond Hogwarts, beyond the Ministry of Magic, and beyond the wars fought by Harry Potter and Voldemort. It takes us into an earlier age when wizarding Britain looked very different. The name Peveril first appears to most readers through The Tale of the Three Brothers, where Antioch, Cadmus, and Ignotus seem almost mythological. Yet one of Rowling's most fascinating revelations is that the Peverils were not legends at all. They were real people. Historical records preserved their names, their bloodlines, and even the location of at least one of their graves. The strongest evidence comes from Ignotus Peveril. During Harry's search for the Deathly Hallows, Xenophilius Lovegood explains that Ignotus was a genuine historical figure. Later, in Godric's Hollow, Harry and Hermione visit the graveyard where generations of witches and wizards are buried. There, among weathered tombstones and centuries of history, they discover Ignotus Peveril's grave. The symbol of the Deathly Hallows is carved into the stone. At that moment, myth and history become impossible to separate. The old tale suddenly acquires the weight of reality. The connection grows even more remarkable when family lines begin to intersect. Harry Potter is descended from Ignotus Peveril through the Potter family. The invisibility cloak passed from generation to generation until it eventually reached James Potter and then Harry. Voldemort, meanwhile, descends from Cadmus Peveril through the Gaunt family. Marvolo Gaunt proudly displayed the Resurrection Stone, though he did not understand its true significance. Tom Riddle inherited both the bloodline and the ring. Without realizing it, the greatest enemy of Harry Potter carried the legacy of one Peveril, while Harry carried the legacy of another. This parallel feels almost designed by fate, though Rowling is careful not to frame it that way. Harry and Voldemort are connected through prophecy, through blood protection, through wand lore, and through horcruxes. The Peveril connection adds another layer. Both men inherit legacies tied directly to death, yet they respond in completely different ways. Voldemort becomes obsessed with avoiding death. Harry gradually learns to accept it. The contrast mirrors the ancient tale itself. Cadmus cannot let go of the dead. Ignotus eventually greets death peacefully. One mystery rarely discussed involves Antioch Peveril, the eldest brother. Compared with Cadmus and Ignotus, Antioch remains strangely obscure. His legacy survives primarily through the Elder Wand, whose history becomes tangled in centuries of violence. Wizards kill for it, steal it, hunt it across Europe. Yet very little survives about Antioch himself beyond the legend. This absence is curious. The most powerful wand in history leaves an enormous historical footprint, but its original owner remains little more than a shadow. The Elder Wand's documented trail only deepens the mystery. By the 20th century, it passes through figures such as Gregorovitch, Grindelwald, Dumbledore, Draco Malfoy, and Harry Potter. Entire chapters of wizarding history revolve around its ownership, yet the wand's true origin remains uncertain. If Dumbledore was correct, Antioch created it himself. If Xenophilius Lovegood was right, death literally gifted it to him. Both explanations remain possible within the narrative because Rowling never settles the debate. The wand works regardless of which story you believe. Cadmus Peveril presents an even stranger puzzle. The Resurrection Stone appears to perform a function unmatched anywhere else in wizarding magic. No spell duplicates it. No known potion achieves the same result. Necromancy in the traditional fantasy sense is almost entirely absent from Harry Potter. Wizards do not routinely summon the dead, yet Cadmus possessed an artifact capable of bridging that divide. Whether he invented it, discovered it, or inherited forgotten knowledge is never revealed. The stone exists, works, and then vanishes back into mystery. This recurring pattern appears everywhere in the Peveril story. The more firmly established the facts become, the less clear the larger picture seems. We know the brothers lived. We know at least 2 of the Hallows survived into modern times. We know their descendants shaped the central conflict of the series, yet we know remarkably little about the world they inhabited. What kind of magical society produced individuals capable of creating artifacts that remained unmatched for centuries? Why did later generations never replicate their achievements? Some readers have proposed that the Peverils possessed knowledge lost during the medieval era. The theory gains strength when you compare their artifacts to other ancient mysteries. The veil in the Department of Mysteries predates the Ministry. Hogwarts itself was founded around the late 10th century by Godric Gryffindor, Salazar Slytherin, Helga Hufflepuff, and Rowena Ravenclaw. Ancient magic repeatedly appears more enigmatic than modern magic. The Room of Requirement, the Chamber of Secrets, and the Hallows all seem to originate from periods when certain magical principles were better understood, or at least approached differently. Dumbledore himself appears fascinated by this possibility. During his youth, he becomes obsessed with the Hallows alongside Gellert Grindelwald. Their dream of mastering death and reshaping the wizarding world grows directly from that fascination. Years later, Dumbledore views his youthful ambitions with regret, yet his interest in the Hallows never entirely disappears. He spends decades studying them. Even so, by the end of his life, he remains uncertain about their ultimate origin. If Dumbledore cannot reach a definitive conclusion, it is difficult to imagine anyone else succeeding. The deeper you look into the Peveril family, the more it begins to resemble a crossroads where many mysteries intersect. The Resurrection Stone touches the dead. The Elder Wand influences life and death through unmatched magical power. The Invisibility Cloak symbolizes the avoidance of death without attempting to conquer it. Harry and Voldemort inherit different branches of the family and embody different responses to mortality. Across centuries, the same themes repeat. The Peverils stand at the center of a pattern that nobody fully understands. And yet there remains one mystery older than the Hallows themselves. The Peverils lived in the Middle Ages. Hogwarts was already centuries old by then. The Ministry would not exist for hundreds of years. But beneath modern London, hidden within the Department of Mysteries, stands an object that appears older still. The veil waited there before Unspeakables began studying death, before the Hallows entered legend, perhaps even before the Peverils were born. As the lantern light flickers across the dark waters, below Hogwarts, the story turns toward that final unanswered question. Who built the veil? And what did they know about death that later generations forgot? Who built the veil, and why does it seem older than every institution that later tried to understand it? The question brings us back to where this journey began, deep beneath the Ministry of Magic, inside the circular chambers of the Department of Mysteries. Of all the unanswered questions surrounding death in Harry Potter, this may be the largest. Rowling never identifies the creators of the veil. No textbook mentions them. No pensive memory reveals them. No ghost recalls them. The object simply exists, ancient and unexplained, waiting at the center of a stone chamber where generations of unspeakables devoted their lives to studying what lies beyond death. What little canon tells us is surprisingly revealing. Rowling stated that the death chamber existed before the Ministry itself. That means the structure predates 1707, when the Ministry of Magic formally replaced the Wizards' Council. The implication is extraordinary. Rather than constructing the chamber, Ministry officials discovered it and built around it. Imagine the decision that required. Somewhere in Britain's magical past, powerful witches and wizards encountered an artifact so significant that they chose not to destroy it, relocate it, or hide it away. Instead, they organized centuries of research around it. The architecture itself hints at forgotten purposes. The chamber resembles an amphitheater rather than a laboratory. Tiered stone benches descend toward the veil. The arrangement suggests observation. It suggests gatherings. It suggests that people once came here not merely to conduct experiments, but to witness something. The veil occupies a stage-like position at the center. Even after centuries, the design feels ceremonial. Whatever the original builders intended, they expected human attention to focus on that archway. One possibility is that the veil was part of an ancient magical tradition related to death. Throughout the series, Rowling repeatedly emphasizes that modern wizarding knowledge is incomplete. Wizards possess extraordinary power, yet they often misunderstand the deepest forces they study. The Department of Mysteries investigates love, time, thought, and death, precisely because these subjects remain unresolved. The Unspeakables are researchers, standing at the edge of knowledge, not masters of it. The existence of the veil suggests that earlier civilizations may have explored these mysteries in ways now forgotten. The pattern appears elsewhere in the wizarding world. Hogwarts itself contains enchantments that modern witches and wizards cannot fully replicate. The Room of Requirement manifests complex magical behavior that nobody completely explains. Salazar Slytherin created a hidden chamber capable of remaining undiscovered for centuries. The Sorting Hat retains the personalities and memories of all four founders long after their deaths. Ancient magic repeatedly demonstrates qualities that later generations struggle to reproduce. The veil fits comfortably within that pattern. Yet unlike Hogwarts, the veil feels fundamentally different. Hogwarts celebrates life, learning, and community. The veil stands in silent conversation with mortality. People hear whispers beyond it. Sirius Black passes through it and never returns. The curtain moves without visible cause. Even the atmosphere surrounding it feels unusual. Harry senses a strange pull toward the archway during his visit. Luna hears voices. The object behaves less like an invention and more like a wound in reality itself. Whether that impression reflects truth or perception remains unknown. Some fan theories push this idea even further. One popular theory proposes that the veil marks a natural boundary between the living world and the afterlife. According to this interpretation, ancient witches and wizards did not create the veil at all. They discovered it. The archway and stone chamber were later constructed around an already existing phenomenon. There is no canon evidence confirming this scenario, yet it helps explain why the veil appears so difficult to understand. The unspeakables may not be studying a magical artifact. They may be studying a fundamental feature of existence. The uncertainty surrounding the veil ultimately reflects a larger truth about Rowling's treatment of death. Throughout the series, she repeatedly approaches the subject from different directions without ever providing a complete map. Ghosts demonstrate that something can remain behind. The Resurrection Stone suggests the dead are not entirely inaccessible. King's Cross hints at a transitional state between life and whatever follows. Horcruxes reveal that souls can be damaged. Dementors threaten the soul from another angle entirely. Each mystery illuminates one corner of a vast landscape while leaving the rest in shadow. This approach becomes especially clear when you consider Albus Dumbledore. More than any other character, Dumbledore serves as the series' voice of wisdom. He understands wand lore, Horcruxes, prophecy, ancient magic, and the Hallows better than almost anyone else alive. Yet even Dumbledore stops short of claiming certainty about death. He offers interpretations, he shares beliefs, he expresses hope, but he never presents a definitive explanation. The man who solved so many mysteries accepts that some questions remain unanswered. That acceptance may be the final lesson hidden beneath the story. Voldemort spends his life demanding certainty. He fears death because he cannot control it. He tears apart his soul searching for guarantees. Harry takes a different path. By the end of the series, he accepts uncertainty. He walks into the Forbidden Forest without knowing exactly what will happen next. He trusts the people he loves. He trusts the choices he has made. Most importantly, he accepts that some mysteries do not need to be solved before they can be faced. The Battle of Hogwarts ends Voldemort falls in the Great Hall. Survivors mourn their dead and begin rebuilding their lives. 19 years later, Harry stands on platform 9 3/4, watching a new generation board the Hogwarts Express. Life continues, yet none of the great mysteries disappear. The veil still hangs beneath the ministry. The dead remain beyond reach. The nature of the soul remains only partially understood. The questions endure, waiting quietly in the background of the wizarding world. And so we return to the lakeshore. Beneath Hogwarts, the lantern still burns beside the black water. Above it, the castle windows glow softly against the night. Somewhere beyond those walls, nearly headless, Nick drifts through silent corridors. Somewhere beyond memory, James and Lily Potter remain forever out of reach. Somewhere beneath London, the ancient veil waits in darkness, as patient as it has always been. The wind moves gently across the surface of the lake, disturbing the lantern's reflection for a moment before the water grows still again. And there, in that quiet stillness, the greatest mystery in Rowling's world remains exactly where it began, just beyond the edge of the light. What becomes clear as you sit with all these mysteries is that Rowling never treated death as a puzzle meant to be solved. She treated it as a horizon. Every road in the wizarding world eventually leads toward it, whether that road begins in the halls of Hogwarts, the cells of Azkaban, the chambers beneath the ministry, or the hidden forests where ancient artifacts wait beneath fallen leaves. The veil, the resurrection stone, the ghosts, the hallows, the horcruxes, and King's Cross all seem at first to be separate mysteries. Yet when you look closely, they are all asking the same question from different directions. Not what death is, but how human beings respond to it. That is why Voldemort stands at the center of so many of these stories, despite understanding so little about them. He seeks immortality through power, domination, and control. He wants certainty. He wants guarantees. He wants a universe in which death can be conquered like an enemy in battle. Every step he takes pulls him further away from the very thing he desires. The more desperately he tries to preserve himself, the less complete he becomes. By the end, the wizard who feared death above all else has damaged his own soul so profoundly that he barely resembles the brilliant young man who first entered Hogwarts decades earlier. Harry follows the opposite path. He spends most of his life surrounded by death. His parents die before he can remember them. Cedric Diggory dies beside him. Sirius Black vanishes through the veil. Albus Dumbledore falls from the astronomy tower. Friends, teachers, and allies are lost one after another. Yet none of these losses convince Harry to seek immortality. Instead, they deepen his capacity for love, loyalty, sacrifice, and compassion. The story's central irony is that Harry survives because he accepts mortality, while Voldemort falls because he refuses to accept it. One reaches for control, the other reaches for courage. Even the magical objects themselves seem arranged around this idea. The Elder Wand promises mastery over others. The Resurrection Stone promises reunion with those who are gone. The Invisibility Cloak offers escape from danger. Yet the tale of the three brothers quietly suggests that none of these desires can fully overcome death. Antioch dies despite his power. Cadmus dies because he cannot release his grief. Only Ignotus finds peace because he eventually stops running. The oldest fairy tale in the series is not really about magical artifacts at all, it is about acceptance. Perhaps that is why the afterlife remains undefined. Rowling could have described it in detail. She could have explained exactly what lies beyond the veil, exactly where souls travel, exactly what Harry experienced in King's Cross. Instead, she leaves space. The dead remain present enough to matter, but distant enough to remain mysterious. James and Lily can guide Harry for a few moments, but they cannot stay. Dumbledore can offer wisdom, but he cannot reveal every answer. The veil flutters, the whispers continue, and the door never fully opens. The mystery survives because the uncertainty itself is part of the story's meaning. And so, as the night settles over Hogwarts once more, you find yourself back where this journey began. The castle rises above the lake, ancient and watchful. The water reflects scattered lights from distant windows. Somewhere in the darkness, unseen beneath the surface, the giant squid drifts through cold depths. The lantern beside the shore burns steadily, casting a small circle of gold against the night. Beyond that circle lies shadow, silence, and questions that no wizard ever completely answered. And for a little while longer, you sit beside the black water, watching the reflection tremble gently in the dark.